All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the PM Therapy Podcast. This is where we talk about the struggles that PM face and how to navigate those struggles. I'm really excited to have a special guest today. Her name is Julia. Julia is from Shopify. I'm going to let her introduce herself, but just wanted to say I've been really looking forward to this conversation. And Julia, welcome to the show. How are you doing, Julia?
Thank you so much. It's really great to be here. I've also been looking forward to it. Um, I'm a little nervous because it's the first time I've ever done something like this before. So appreciate everybody coming along for the ride. But thank you so much for reaching out and inviting me to do this with you.
No, for sure, for sure. Yeah, no, thank you so much. I think that there's a lot to be gained because you have a very impressive career. So Julia, for those that don't know you, why don't you just talk a bit about yourself? Yeah, why don't we start there?
Thank you. Well, it's hard to know where to start. I'm Julia. I am currently working as a product operations leader at Shopify, and this is a relatively new role for me. I started doing this in January, so it's really exciting actually to have a new role using a lot of the same skills that I've earned over the years, but in a little bit of a different capacity. And so, you know, I have spent just over 4 years working at Shopify in various different capacities. Prior to Shopify, I was at Point Click Care, which is where Mukhtar and I met.
Yep.
And before that, I was at BBM and spent the bulk of my career at BlackBerry. That's kind of where I feel like I grew up at BlackBerry in terms of my professional career.
Nice, nice.
I'm located just outside of Toronto. I'm a mom of two boys and have, you know, have had a really rewarding career working at some of Canada's absolute best and top technical companies.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's impressive. Yeah. So just quickly, when I looked at your history, I saw that you were in recruiting before. Is that correct? Before you pivoted to project management, is that correct?
That's right. That's where I started my career.
Okay.
And, when I think back to those roles that I had, the majority of my time in recruitment was actually managing the campus recruitment program at BlackBerry. And still to this day, many years later, is one of my favorite jobs.
Nice.
And I got to work with universities across Canada. I think I've been to all universities with the exception of a couple. Been to every province as part of that role, and some campuses in the U.S. as well. And I love that job because it was all about building relationships. Building relationships with the schools, building relationships with hiring managers, building relationships with potential top talent, and understanding what people's needs were and how to match people's needs together. And so I was lucky that it was about bringing new people into the company, but also managing their experience while they were at the company. And so it was very cyclical. It was a recurring program. Every 4 months, we would have a new cohort of students coming in.
Nice.
And so I look back, it was an incredibly busy job because there was a lot of travel and we hired a lot of people in those days at BlackBerry, but very rewarding. And still to this day, I have connections in my LinkedIn who I met as students who are wanting to come and work at BlackBerry.
Nice, nice. Hey there, just quickly, are you looking for a PM role? Have you been struggling in this insane, crazy job market? Well, if this sounds like you, we might be able to help you. We've helped lots of people land 100 to 300K PM roles. All you have to do is just click on the link below, answer some questions, and if we see that there's an initial fit, you will be invited to a free 30-minute call where we can further assess your job search goals and challenges. And if we see that we'll be able to help you, we would explain to you how we can do that and what the next steps will be. All right, then, back to the show. No, I can imagine, placing people in, sometimes their dream jobs, right? So that must be amazing, and especially, for the first time, right? So I can imagine how fulfilling that career must have been, or that line of work must have been. What made you? How did the switch happen from recruitment to project management or program management?
Yeah, as I mentioned, there was a lot of travel in that role, and I had just had my second son and was coming back from maternity leave, and wanted something that would keep me a little closer to home. Even though the job was in recruitment, like I said, we ran that as a program, and so I had already started to build those project management skills, if you will. So there was an opportunity to move into a PMO within the HR team. And so I took that opportunity and got to work on some interesting projects. I learned something really important in making that transition, and that was that I had a high level of, I like to have a high level of accountability. And so being a project manager was rewarding to an extent, but I needed to have more of the program level accountability. I found that that was a little bit more my sweet spot, if you will. And so I managed a few projects, but eventually moved into managing BlackBerry's new entity development work. So there was, at that time, we were growing globally, opening new entities around the globe. And I was able to manage that suite of projects as a program. And that's where I found my groove again, if you will. And that opened up some new opportunities that I didn't even know would have existed, to be honest. And so I started working more closely with the business. At that time, we were getting ready to launch the BB10 software and having our own app store. And so I moved into working on the what was called at the time BlackBerry Commerce and commercializing how we would actually commercialize the app store. And so I got to work on projects with payment providers. I got to work on actually standing up the app store from a commercialization perspective, figuring out how we were going to charge tax in all of the right countries, etc.
Yeah, no, that's really amazing. And I like how you mentioned you went from project to program. In your experience, do you think there is a different skill set required to go from managing projects to managing programs?
For me, there was. I don't know that it's the same everywhere for everyone. There seemed to me to be a level of accountability at the program manager with the program manager role that I didn't necessarily get to have with the project manager role. And so the project manager role was really about execution. With the program manager role at that time and in that team that I was working in, I was able to help to set some of the direction of how we were going to execute. And that lent itself well to the level of accountability that I like to work with.
Yeah, nice. I think that's that's a really interesting way to look at it, because the reason I'm sort of trying to tease into this is because a lot of times there is this debate as to what's the difference between a project and a program manager, and some companies just use them interchangeably, right? But yeah, I like that. Like, I guess the level of accountability is different. I know in some places it's really about scope and size, and in some places the textbook definitions. Basically, if you have a collection of projects that you're managing, then that's considered a program, right? Okay, so you went from project to program management, and then to leading a team of program managers, right? So when you are now in that leadership role where you have program managers reporting to you, how is that? How is that different? And is there a different skill set required, when you are at that level?
Yeah, leading, I've been very fortunate to have an amazing team of TPM, technical program managers at Shopify. And leading that team was very rewarding. But of course, it is different than when you're managing programs yourself.
Mhm.
And so the role of the manager for your team is really to be there to guide and um, help the team understand, you know, what are some um, what are some potential risks or um, strategies that they could be looking at in how they're managing their program.
Mhm.
So not being the one to actually manage the delivery and execute on those goals, but
Yeah.
to help the team uh, manage all of what needs to happen for their programs and their fairly large program teams as well.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And I think that that's something that comes up, for a lot of people when they are transitioning into leadership. It's because a lot of times you are a doer, right? And then when you now transition into leadership, it's difficult to pull back, especially because a lot of times the reason that you're promoted was because you're very good at doing, right? But now the challenge now switches to, okay, how do you enable people to be good at doing while you take a step back? Did you find that? Did you find that challenging? Like, where, because you're very good at what you do in terms of executing, driving strategy, and all of that. But now, when you had a team, did you struggle with that? Like, where you had to take a step back and not have to, do the doing, so to speak.
Yeah, it is a balance, right?
Yeah.
It is definitely a balance, and always I want my team to be learning and growing.
Mhm.
And you know, part of that is demonstrating,
Mhm.
right? And part of that is pushing and asking questions, challenging, so that people are being guided in a way that is going to make them successful in managing their projects or programs,
Yeah.
and not being the doer. So you're absolutely right. That is a switch for sure.
Mhm.
And every person on your team also has different needs and they have different strengths. And
Mhm.
so understanding what each individual needs from you to be successful at what they're doing is so important.
Mhm.
And everyone is going to have a different set of needs that may change over time.
Mhm.
And the growth goals that they have as well are going to be unique to them. And so understanding what those growth goals are and how to help them achieve it so that they're not just successful in the current role that they're playing, but they're also building those blocks to be successful in their career path.
Yeah. Absolutely makes sense. So switching gears a bit. So, you've led a lot of initiatives, and you've done that at like very, very big companies. Have you had moments where you've doubted your abilities, even when even though you were sort of executing at that high level? Have you had moments of self-doubt?
Of course. Of course.
Yeah.
I don't think it's human not to have that self-doubt. I think the important thing is not to sit in that space for too long. Um, and to It's okay to have those feelings and to acknowledge that that's what you're feeling when you're feeling it,
Mhm.
and then to focus on how to move forward from that, how to move on from having those feelings.
Yeah.
uh, for anyone who's watching, if they've done an enneagram, I'm an enneagram 8. If you haven't done an enneagram, I would recommend looking into it. It's been really enlightening for me to learn more about myself. And I am most comfortable when I'm able to take action. And so moving on from that place of self-doubt
Yeah.
is usually by me figuring out how to take action. And that's where I feel most comfortable. So I don't know, maybe it's the, program manager in me, but usually make a list, right?
Yeah.
A list usually helps. What do I know? What don't I know? What can I control? What is out of my control?
Hmm.
And how do we move things forward?
Nice, nice.
Mhm,
What did you mention before? You said an enneagram. I didn't quite get that. Like,
mhm.
how do you spell that? Just because I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, ENNEAGRAM.
ENNEAGRAM. Okay.
Enneagram.
Enneagram. What is that? What's an enneagram?
It is yeah, that's exactly right. It is a test. Like you answer a series of questions to
Yeah.
better understand your working style,
I see.
to understand like more about your personality. And
Mm.
so there's 9 types, I believe.
Okay.
And I did that actually. I'm very fortunate. Shopify encouraged employees to do that when they started, when I was starting. And
Yeah.
I did it. It was the first time I did it. And I learned a lot about myself
Mm.
and also about how to work with other Enneagram types as well.
Nice, nice.
Mhm.
Okay. I've never heard about. I mean, I've heard about the typical Myers Briggs and all of that. Yeah, but not this. Thanks for sharing that. I'll take a look at that. By the way, for those of you that are watching, if you have any questions, just leave them in the chat, and we'll get to them. All right. I saw Cassidy left a comment. So hi, Cassidy. All right. So let's go on, Julia. Um, and this might, we learn from failures, right? So what would you say has been your one of your top, failures or difficult times um in your career, and how did you manage that, and how did you bounce back from that?
Yeah. When I was thinking about this, it was not easy actually to come up with an example because I really do think of the learnings that I've had, right?
Mhm.
Not so much as things being failures. And
Yeah.
so I was very lucky to work at BBM. As so, BBM was a part of BlackBerry, and then we left BlackBerry and we stood up our own company with a strategic initiative with a company in Indonesia. And that was a very exciting time. There was, I don't know, I feel like maybe 60 or 70 of us who left BlackBerry to work at BBM. And we stood up the company. We were running the app. And it was a really great group of folks who worked there. But unfortunately, we could not keep the app running with the users that we had and who were turning off of the platform.
Mm.
So when I think back, across all the different products that I've worked on and, teams that I've worked on, that's probably the one that sticks out as I wish we could have figured out how to make that work.
Mm.
But when I look back at that, that's actually not the thing that I focus on. I focus on all of the amazing people and relationships that were built uh,
Mhm.
amongst that team.
Yeah.
And so, to this day, we are still connected. Many of us are still connected. We have chats. Uh, Last year, we had a dinner get together as well.
Nice.
And one of the things that I feel so proud about is when we were um, closing down the company, we actually held a number of different events to help people find new opportunities. And I got to be a part of that, which was fantastic. And
Mm.
so, I love the products that I've gotten to work on. I love the companies that I've been able to work in as well. But it's really the people and the relationships that you form with the people that you work with. And I
Yeah.
think those are like the really important things that you take from any of those opportunities you have.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And a lot of times, y- the relationship that you form in those difficult times actually end up being, stronger and even just more deep, I should say, right?
Yeah.
So Yeah, even from when we worked together at PCC, I could see that there was a strong BBM network there, right?
Mhm.
So that's amazing. Um, when you're leading an initiative or a team in an uncertain time, how do you how do you cope with the pressure of being the one that everybody looks at, right? It's like you're at the forefront, your face is on this very critical initiative, right? If it fails, it's on you. If it succeeds, you know, it might be on you. So how do you deal with that pressure?
I'm not sure that I've ever felt so individually responsible,
Mhm.
uh, because I always have worked in such strong teams that uh, we rely on each other. Of course, as a TPM, you are the the hub of all of the things that need to happen. So there is that responsibility, absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually feel most comfortable being in that role.
Hmm.
I feel like, one of the things that TPMs do is to simplify very complex sets of information. And we do that with the purpose of being able to move forward. And
Hmm.
so to be able to take a lot of information, a lot of complex information, a lot of stakeholders, and simplify things in a way that people can all move forward at the right pace in the same direction
Yeah.
is something that TPMs generally are looked towards to do. And so
Hmm.
that is actually a place where I feel comfortable
Hmm.
having
Yeah.
role for so long.
Yeah. No, amazing. And do you have any what should I call it? Hacks or rule of thumbs when it comes to just simplifying the complex? Because I think it takes a good amount of skill to be able to simplify the complex, right? Because the programs and initiatives that we work on can be very, very complex, right? And you need to be able to simplify, things for different audiences. So do you have any like tips or like go-to techniques, I should say, that usually works for you when it comes to simplifying the complex?
I would say one of the aha moments I had quite early on when I started to work directly on R&D teams was to become comfortable asking questions
Mm.
that nobody else was asking. And so I remember very early on working with developers and being in jam sessions where, we're whiteboarding different solutions, etc. And, I would feel like absolutely overwhelmed because they're talking about things that I didn't have an expertise in at that point.
Right.
And I would go to, people's desks after the meeting. Of course, that's when we were still IRL, and ask the questions that I was a little bit too shy to
Mhm.
ask in that meeting setting. And interestingly enough, the responses that I would be getting uh, would be like, "Oh, I never thought about that,"
Mhm.
or "That's a good question." And so what I realized is that the way I was looking at things with, all of the experience that I had had wasn't the things that other people had that experience in, and therefore weren't thinking about it in a different way or with a different lens on, that
Right.
actually had a lot of value to what we were building.
Mm.
And so asking questions in uh, in a way that will help everybody get grounded in the problem and the solutions is, I think, a value add when it's done constructively, obviously,
Yeah.
and done with the intention of simplifying for everybody. So often in meetings, you know, people are talking and everyone thinks that they're being understood until somebody asks a question where it's like, no, that's actually not what I meant, right? Let me clarify. And so, playing things back
Yeah.
to ensure that people understand is an important role. And it does take, a certain level of confidence to be able to ask those questions, ask
Mm.
smart questions, and challenge people in a way that is going to simplify in order to be able to move forward.
Yeah, no, that's such an important point, like asking good questions. And sometimes I think that that's one of the main things that I bring to the table, is really because, and the other thing that you mentioned, just even playing things back, it's like, okay, this is what was said. I'm just rehashing, what was said maybe in my own words. And that leads to clarifications, or even like, further exploration of the topic. And you find that just doing that regularly, it really, what's the word I'm looking for? It really illuminates, maybe that's not right, but basically it really helps to get everybody on the same page. Yeah, so I think that asking questions is a really powerful technique. Do you have any, because you mentioned asking constructive questions and asking good questions, what helps you do that, right? Because a lot of people are scared to ask questions or shy to ask questions because they don't want to come across as being ignorant. Like, what helps you, I guess, ask thoughtful, constructive questions that would move the conversation forward?
Simon Sinek actually has a great video about asking questions. I would encourage folks to look that video up. Certainly, you do need to have a certain level of context to make sure that you're asking questions with the purpose of moving things forward. And so educating yourself and equipping yourself with information is important. Having the right level of context to be able to even know what questions to be asking.
Gotcha. So I guess coming into the meeting, like just being familiar with the topic, the agenda, so you have the necessary context, to be able to ask smart questions. That's what I'm hearing, right?
Exactly.
Okay, awesome. Just pivoting a bit, in your career as a leader, what would you say is the toughest feedback you've received?
I think that I'm probably harder on myself than anybody else is on me. And that is something to manage as well. Kind of comes back a little bit to your question earlier about self-doubt. And so, it's very natural, I think, for people to focus on the things that they need to improve on. And, you might hear feedback and it's like, good. And you're like, hey, get to the stuff I need to work on, right? That's very natural. And so reminding ourselves that it's actually really important to know what you do well and to lean into that. Lean into the things that you do well. Lean into the things that you enjoy. So often I see when people are enjoying something that they're doing, they're usually really good at it, and vice versa. And so leaning into the things that are already strengths, I think will help propel you even further. Of course, you can't be blind to the things that you need to improve on. And it's important to always, be striving for doing more, better, etc. But to also make sure you know what your strengths are and lean into those.
Yeah. No, I recall reading this. I think this book is called Strengths Finder. I think it's, I don't remember the author's name, but I think his last name is Buckingham or something like that. But yeah, I really enjoyed reading that, because a lot of times you focus on your flaws, on the negatives. But basically what I got from that is, just double down on your strengths, and then for your flaws, as long as they're not fatal flaws, like just double down on your strengths, right? Because we all know what our core responsibilities are, right? And as long as the gaps, your weaknesses are not detrimental to being successful at your job, then you just double down on your strengths, right? Yeah, so I really love that advice. All right, Julia, are you up for lightning round?
Sure, let's do it.
Awesome. What's your biggest pet peeve in meetings?
Oh, this is lightning. I'm supposed to go fast, aren't I?
Take your time.
Biggest pet peeve in meeting. I want to come up with something fun or funny, but the thing that comes to mind, I think, is when people continue to make the same point over and over. Coming back to the Enneagram that I mentioned earlier, I tend to move quickly, and so I can tend to want to move more quickly than others sometimes. So I guess that would be my
Yeah.
pet peeve.
Okay. So no rehashing over and over again for you. Just nice. Introvert or extrovert?
Extrovert.
All right. Nice. Nice.
Does that surprise you?
That's a good question. I would have thought No, actually, because like nowadays you never know. Because I've seen like a lot of people that I thought were extroverts, but they're actually introverts, and vice versa. So right now I think my radar is messed up when it comes to that. Yeah. So if you weren't in tech, what would you be doing?
I think about law school.
Oh wow.
So maybe I would go back to school, become a lawyer.
Nice. Did you study that, or was that part of the plan before?
No.
Okay. If you don't mind me asking, like, what about that do you like? Law?
Well, I don't know if I would like it because I haven't done it, but it's something that I think I might like.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Because for me as well, I think I've always wondered whether I would love law school. I think it's part of my fantasy, because I really love language and just how people like manipulate and just use language and argumentation and debates. Like I really love that. I also participated in debates, so yeah, I love that as well. And funny enough, because I watch debates in my free time, and I find that I use those skills as a PM, like because there's a lot of persuasion, dealing with stakeholders regularly.
That is true.
So yeah.
Although I have 2 teenagers, and I feel like I don't often win those debates. So
that's like a different level. It's like that. Like we're in the Pee Wee leagues. Like that's world championship. Nice. Would data-driven decisions or gut feeling? Like, what do you tend to go
by? Both.
Okay.
When I have a gut feeling and I haven't followed it, I have come to realize that I should have followed it. And so I feel like I have pretty good intuition and I should follow it more.
Nice. Nice. What's one app you can't live without?
You know what? The one I'm using right now is Headway.
Okay.
Have you heard of this one? It basically summarizes books for you, and you can either read the summary or listen to the summary. Okay. And I'm really enjoying that right now.
Headway? Like that? Headway?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's kind of like, because I know there's Blink, and then there's the other one that's not coming to mind right now. So okay, so it has summaries, and then does it also have like an audio?
Yeah, you can either listen to the summary or you can read it.
Nice. I just found one app. It's a GPT, and basically you can take a YouTube video, like the link to a YouTube video, and you just plug it in, and it gives you this nice rich summary. And that's been a time saver for me. Like, and you can even you can have different levels of depth when it comes to the summary. So yeah, I really love that. It's, I think it's accessible to anyone. You just go on the GPT app store, so to speak, if I can call it that, and just look for YouTube summaries. Awesome. All right, Julia. So we've gotten to the end of the interview. If people want to reach out to you afterwards, how can they reach out to you?
LinkedIn. And my LinkedIn profile is here, so please feel free to DM me in LinkedIn.
Nice. Yeah, Julia, this was fun. I really enjoyed, speaking to you and just talking about your career. Thank you so much for making the time, and we'll speak to you all later. Take care now. Bye.
Thank you so much, Mukhtar.
Sure.